The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
There was a famous Goyen who lived in Yerushalayim, the Teiras Chesed. He was the Lubliner Rav. He settled later in Yerushalayim. Mamish Kol Rozloi, honestly, they wrote about him. I think the Malbim wrote about him when he was a young bocher. He never seen such a Goyen in all his life. And he told the Maises, as they were so poor in his house, they owned nothing. There was one treasured thing they had in the house. They had a Sefer Yichus that went back to David HaMelech. It was a parchment that showed all the generations. And that was their prized possession in the family. It says one day he was looking through the letter that had the whole Seder HaYichus. The next day it was gone. His mother tore it up. She said, if that's taking you away from your Limud HaTorah, I don't want it in the house. That was Amol, the Hasoga, the Chashivas, how precious Torah and time for Torah was. Rabbi Yashiv soll sein gesund und stark. Had a Rebbitzin, Oleo Hasholem, who was Meister Nefesh her whole life for his Torah. They were Megadla, I think it's 10 children, 11 children in a one-bedroom apartment in Mea She'orim. She didn't let him for a moment worry about anything in Olam Hazeh. Say one of the children was once in an accident. She wouldn't tell him about it until the child was back from the hospital. Everything was fine. She shouldn't even have to have a daig and take him away from his learning. When Rebbitzin Elyashiv was holding by Yitzias Neshama, Elyashiv came to her bedside to be there at the moment of Ptira. And she saw him coming into the room, and she said, go back to learn. I don't want you here. Don't need you here. And Elyashiv went back to his shir, and they came in later, 15 minutes later, they told him that the Rebbitzin was nifty. Now you can imagine, Rebbitzin Elyashiv, who one certainly can say, gave away her life for her husband's Torah, who did everything she could that he should become the Goyen and the Poisek Ador that he is. Certainly, everyone would have understood that she's entitled, that Yitzias Neshama, she should have this Godel standing there. But she didn't want that, because I could have some more Torah. And he understood it too. Avada. For regular people, it could be a Geder. It would be an Achzorius. But when you're living in their world, in the world where really we're margish what Torah means, that's so much more. It's so much more giving away to. It's so much more of a gift. That's the world. That's the Eirech in the lives of Talmidei Chachamim. There was a Yid, a very, very choshev Rav and Askin, who accomplished extraordinary things for Klal Yisrael. And he once went to visit the Chazon Ish. And he was discussing with the Chazon Ish his various activities and his accomplishment. The Chazon Ish said, mamish, moiridik, unbelievable. The things that you've done for the Klal, half of a fella. But I want you to just go take a look in the next room. There's a young man sitting there. Take a look at him. This is my nephew, Ephraim Kanievsky. Take a look at him. Because everything that you've accomplished still doesn't compare to what he's doing. And take a look at him now, because who knows in the Olam HaElyon who's going to be able to see him. So take a good look at him now. So if we understand we have a halacha for Torah, we are machshav it, and we want more of it. We want people around us. We want our mishpachas to have it. We want it to give to. We want to be marzi. We want to be mechazik it. And if we have a chashivas to Torah, we come to the next step. We come to ahavas HaTorah. We love Torah's Hashem. We love Talmidei Chachamim. We love those who are oisik in Torah, who are connected to Torah. We have an ahava to them. There's a story told when the Ktsois HaChoishin wrote his chibah, the Heilige Ktsois, and he was then an unknown young Talmud Chacham, and he came, I think the Yeshuas Yankov was the Rav either in Lemberg or Lvov, I don't remember, and he came to get a haskama from the Yeshuas Yankov, and he brought him the Ksav Yad, and Yeshuas Yankov says, okay, go, I have to look it over, you should find yourself a place to sleep, and he found some inn, some place to sleep there in the town, and the Yeshuas Yankov took the Ksav Yad to look at it. The next morning the Ktsois wakes up and he hears music in the streets, and he looks out the window, and there are musicians playing, and there's a crowd, and they're holding a chuppah, and the Yeshuas Yankov is holding the Ksav Yad of the Ktsois HaChoishin, and he's dancing under the chuppah with tears streaming down his face towards the place where the Ktsois HaChoishin was sleeping. Ahavas HaTorah. Yeshuas Yankov saw that there was a piece of Mesiras HaTorah, there was a Yetzirah, that you're not going to harve in Atzof Kol HaDoros, a Ktsois. And his simcha and his ahava was so intense he could only express it by dancing in the street from joy. There was some Bochrim who on their way to yeshiva, I forgot which one of the yeshivas in the Litta, was near the town of Dvinsk. And there were Bochrim would, instead of going to yeshiva, there was an Indian, there were two or three Bochrim would go for his man to learn B'chavrusa with the Yor Sameach. And this story was told over by one of, I think, Rav Baxt from Detroit told it over from his uncle, who had the schus to spend the winter learning with the Yor Sameach, and said they were sitting and learning. They came to a difficult time, so they didn't know Pshat. And the Yor Sameach said, let's go mispal, let's daven. Let's daven HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us a havas HaTorah. He said, Rebbe, why shouldn't we just daven the Baruch Hu should tell us Pshat and the Toisus? Why do we have to daven for a havas HaTorah? He said, I'll tell you. He says, imagine, he says, sometimes you have a little baby is given over to a babysitter. And the baby's crying, and nobody knows what the baby wants. Try to give him a bottle, you try to give him some food, anything, you pick him up, you shake him, nothing happens. The mother walks in 1 second she knows what the baby wants, and she calms the baby down. Says, what's the pshat? Because when you love someone very much, you understand what that person is saying to you. If we have proper ahavas HaTorah, we understand what the Torah is talking to us. We understand what the Torah is telling us. If we want to understand the Torah, we need to mispal the Rebbeinu Shalom should give into us ahavas HaTorah. Ahavas HaTorah means, like there was a Meiser of Aaron Mitavrig when the great Goyin Elita, who there was a curfew when they were under Russian occupation, and you weren't allowed to have any lights on because they said you would be signaling the enemy. And he was harving in a Rambam, and he had a candle on, and the soldiers caught him, and they brought him out to be shot. And as they were about to kill him, he said, could you please give me 15 more minutes to live? I almost have shot on the Rambam. Now we are so far removed, but we should at least be on the Madrega to understand what he felt. To liga, sometimes to have the schus to liga in a sugya once and know what it feels like. If I just had 15 minutes to get pshat, I would understand what he felt. Ahavas HaTorah. The Samsoif in his final moments of life, when his Talmidim and his children were gathered, he said, just say words of Torah, say Mishnayos, say Gemara, just say words of Torah. That's all I want to hear. There was a Yid in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Yosef Kastel, he was a Zokan. I remember him noch. He was a Slonim Chassid, a very old man, and he had traveled, he had seen Gedolei Olam, and Bacham used to come and he used to tell over who from the Gedolim that he saw. And once he told over that he heard from the Divrei Shmuel, from the Slonim Rebbe, who knew the Beis HaLevi. And he said the Beis HaLevi once stood for 6 hours just saying over and over again, Omar Abaye, Omar Abaye. For no other reason that he was so overcome with Ahava, he couldn't continue. He couldn't rise sich from the Omar Abaye. This is Ahavas HaTorah that is really in our neshamas. There was a Yid who lived in Yerushalayim, Reb Mordechai Leib, his name was. He was a Moirudik Masber, he lived in Sharei Chesed. They say when the Bochum would be coming home from yeshiva, learning late at night, he was going to start his day. He'd say, oh, you're ending, I'm just starting. And he had storim, so he began with Mishnayos, then Gemara, then Ian, then Bekiyas, then he went into Kabbalah, into Drush. His day was full of Limud HaTorah. He had 12 children, he lost 11 of them b'chayav. He had one son who survived, and Rishim Betzalel, he's Malamed in Yerushalayim. And somebody asked him, how are you able to live? Such Yisurin that he went through besides the Aniyas and the Dachkis. Says, how could you walk around with such tsar? He said, tsar. Ich wasch mich in Honig a ganze Tag. I'm bathing in honey all day. Because he's living in a different world. In the world of Abaye V'Rav, in the world of Tosfos, in the world of the Rishonim, in the world of the Achronim. That's the Gan Eden. That's there when a person goes into the world of Limud HaTorah, whatever it is. And that's the way one has to enter Torah, even if his Torah is only for an hour a day. But when he's there, he has to be there, washing himself, bathing in honey. And then he doesn't need anything. There was once a very wealthy man who came to Yerushalayim, and the Askanim wanted him to give a donation to the Yishuv. They brought him into the Yerushalayim Rav to Shmuel Salant. And he was just about to begin his meeting, and a younger man walked in, and Shmuel Salant turned away from this wealthy man, and he went into a lengthy discussion with this younger man. Meantime, the fellow got very insulted and he walked away. This is what I was about. I came here for a visit with the Yerushalayim Rav, and he talks to this fellow. So the Askanim felt that they had lost a golden opportunity. They were able to get a donation, and he was insulted. So a group went down to the hotel where he was standing. They said, we want to show you something. I want to take you some. I want to show you who that young man was. And they take him to an alley in Mea Shearim. And there's a basement under the ground. There's a little bit of a window sticking out. And he says, go look into that window. It's about supper time. And he sees this fellow, this young man, is sitting at his table. And around the table are about 7 or 8 children. And there's a little plate full of olive oil. And there's a few pieces of bread. And they're dipping the bread into the oil and giving each child a piece of bread. And that was supper. After supper, he gives out Sidurim. And all together they begin to bench with a moiridik ne'imah, singing the benching. All of them together with such a simcha. It was like the whole basement was lit up. After benching, each one of the children took out a different sefer. The older one took out a Gemara, the next one a Mishnayos, the next one a Chumash, till the last, the youngest one took out Aleph Beis, and they all start learning off from Koil. He's saying the Gemara, he's saying Aleph Beis, Gimel Daled, and this is for an hour and a half. He's standing and he's watching. He never saw such a sight in his life. And then the tiny one with the Aleph Beis fell asleep, and the father got up and he took him, he put him in one corner of the room and he covered him over. The next one fell asleep, he put him in another corner until they all fell asleep, and they were all put in different corners of the room, and the father was sitting and learning mamash like he was in Shamayim. And this Gvir was sitting looking in that window transfixed. He never saw such a thing. The next day he went to Shmuel Salant and he said, I saw something, I can't believe such a thing could exist. I want to have the schus to support this man, and I want to help him out. He should be able to have some sort of a life. So Shmuel Salant started laughing. You want to help him? Look, I'll try, I'll ask him. So he called the young man. He said, there's a Yid who wants to help you out. Help me out? What am I missing? I have everything I need. Life couldn't be more beautiful. I'm living in Gan Eden. The world of Torah Hashem. And we have to, even though it sounds like madregas, but in a small way we can attach ourselves to such madregas. Rabbi used to tell about his father, Reb Shnei Zalman. So his father was a soicher in materials and textiles. And there was a time when that business was terribly, terribly down. And he had no parnosa. And he had a seder before davening. It was a few hours. And just during that time, there was a seder. Somebody came, a very big buyer, wanted to buy a huge amount of cloth from him. And his wife, his Rebbetzin, came knocking on the door. And she said, if somebody wants to buy a big, he said, I'm sorry, if you can wait till after my seder, fine. If not, he should, the Rebbe will give me parnosa otherwise. And he would not come out. Because he knew in the time that he had to learn, that time I'm in a different world. And the children absorbed that, and they saw that, and they saw what the chashivas of Torah was. There was a Yid, Reb David the Blinde, he was called. He lived in Brisk. He was called Reb David the Blinde. He was a Malamed. Why was he called Reb David the Blind Man? He was such a Kaddish, whenever he walked in the streets, he would walk with his eyes closed. Didn't want to see a Rio Asur, so they called him the Blind Reb David. And he had a cheder where he learned with children. And he was a very sharp Yid. Every Friday he would ask a kasha and send the boys home. They had to come back with the teretz, and whoever got a teretz would get 3 kopecks. So once Reb Chaim was a little boy, and he sent him on with a kasha, and he asked his father, the Beis Halevi, and he came in with the teretz. Said, for that teretz, your father earns 10 rubles a month. For that teretz, that type of salary, you should give a better teretz. So he was the sharp man. Al Kolponim, when the Gezeira Nebuch of the Cantonisten came, when the Russian government was kidnapping Jewish children off the streets. It was a danger to get together, but he kept going. He had a cheder, and he would hide, and they would learn together. And anybody saw a policeman coming, they would run. And one day, there was one of these policemen looking for Jewish children pass by, and he hears the Koil HaTorah, he realizes there's a cheder here, and he runs in, and he tries to grab one of the children. Reb David went over and gave him a smack in the face. The fellow ran out, and versteht sich, the Bekernish and the Stott. It was a chutzpah. Smacking a soldier of the Tsar was considered an insult to the Tsar, and they had to use all sorts of protection to free him, to get him out of trouble. Eventually, they got him out of trouble. And the Beis Halevi called him and said, I don't understand, Reb David. Where did you take the chutzpah to do such a thing? You weren't afraid? He said, what chutzpah? We were middle of a toysvus. He had a chutzpah to disturb. I smacked him. They say Reb David's Einekel once came to the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim said, you're an Einekel of David al-Blinde. That smack that he gave to the Russian soldier will stand for his Einekel until Mashiach, until the Zman of Mashiach. But the Musig, to realize that even though we live in a world of Tirdus, when we're in Torah, we're in a different world. Somebody told me this week, unbelievable Maisa. There's a Rav here, the Rav in the Satmar Kehillah in Monsey, Rav Halberstam, was on a trip now to the Ukraine. There was a Yid from Manchester, was a Moyle, who goes around in these different cities in Russia, and he does brissen. And he asked him, Rav Halberstam asked him, what Mesiras Nefesh he's seen in Russia. He says, I'll tell you, there's one thing I saw, I just can't get out of my mind. So they had to go to a very, very far off city, a place that's completely off the beaten track, and there's many Yidden who live there, but it's so difficult. The Yiddishkeit there is mamash, there's nothing. Had to do a bris there. And for some reason he came into the shul. And I come into the shul, and I see there's a crowd of people there. And I asked him, when are you davening? He said, davening? What? We don't know how to daven. What's davening? So what do you mean, what's davening? So, what are you doing here? I said, look, there's two things. There's coming to shul, and there's davening. We don't know how to daven. Doesn't mean we're not going to come to shul. So the whole olam comes together 3 times a day in shul and stares at the walls, wishing they knew how to daven. That's Midas HaMalchus. That's the Isgaber Koari we spoke about. I wish I could know more. I wish I could learn more. I wish I had more time. I wish I had more menuchas hanefesh. That's a ma'aseh by the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants that cheshek and that rotzoin.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org